Hello, beautiful people. We're back again with another episode of Analytical Perspective, the entertainment edition, and I'm Pharaoh Moses, if you don't already know. This episode of Analytical Perspective will be on Johnson, episode 4, called The Lady. So I'm going to start us out going character by character, walking us through a little bit of the plots and storylines, and then give you a little bit of my perspective. So we start out the show with Omar going to a therapy or counseling meeting where he meets some aggressive people at that meeting, and he meets Miss Jane, who is conducting the meeting. She goes on to ask him how did he end up coming about for the meeting, in which he replied, he had a bad day, and one thing led to another, in which she asks the group, is this really taking acceptance? And they say no. So then he tells the full story that, he let his anger get the best of him and almost fought someone, and this is how he's at the meeting. When we fast forward later in the episode, it is told to the group members that they cannot drink as long as they are coming to the meetings. So Omar decides that he's going to have a conversation because Miss Jane thinks that he's there because he needs to sign off for probation or he has been court ordered, which none of the above is the reason why Omar is there, and he applies to her that he's there because of his own validity. So she says, hey, that's nice that you're there, and she starts to read off statistics that, the black community, even though they've gone through systemic racism and things, that they are less likely than their white counterparts to seek mental health help or mental well-being help. And he tells her a little funny story about his cousin having a little bit, being a little special, and how his mom used to say that, he's just a little touched. And she replies back, well, your mom's a little touched. And he says, don't talk about a black man's mom, because earlier she was a little bit confused on whether she should call him black and African American. But I'm going to put it like this. Miss Jane is a cool person. I think that she's really trying to understand where he's coming from and everything like that. And after that, the next time we see Omar, he is at Jarvis's house. And I'm stopped right there with Omar. Now I'm going to roll into Keith. When we see Keith, Keith is looking into the window of the storefront. And up rolls Rachel. She is the real estate broker for that storefront. And she starts to kind of flirt, in my opinion. He's asking how much it is. She says $450. Are you punking me? Says Keith. And she's like, $450 per square foot. And she's telling him that she's there to meet a client that may be interested in renting the space. And if Keith wants to, he can come in and look at the space. And the client comes, and when the client comes, she asks Keith and the client what would they use the spaces for. And the client basically says, he makes XX movies or adult movies. And Keith says that, I just want to display my photographs and portraits and stuff like that. And she tells him the logistics of renting out that space, that they're looking for a long-time lease, at least 3 years. And Keith just basically bows out because he's like, I was looking just for like 3 months, trying to get my money together. So he leaves out, and Rachel follows out after him to say, just try. You never know. and she can't make any promises because it seems that Rachel was a little bit disgusted with the client knowing that he made adult movies. The next time we see Keith is at Jarvis's house. Moving on to Jarvis. While all of this is going on with Omar and Keith, we see Jarvis is on the 18-hole endeavor with Bill and his son to discuss this little plan of like, what do you really need me to do? And we find out that these two basically want to use Jarvis because he's black and he's successful. They want to use him as a client to say basically like, hey, we have diversity or inclusion in our business function. And they try to persuade Jarvis to go in quicker or accept their deal. And if he does, they'll just give him $50,000 instantly. Which Jarvis is listening to this conversation of basically being a token, and he's not really liking it. And he basically says, well, I gotta still think about it. When we see him again, we're at his house, which he's discussing with Lisa everything about playing golf with Bill and them, and how he's not really fond of feeling like a charity case. Which Lisa doesn't really seem like she comprehends that the conversation of the day while being on the golf course was kind of condescending to Jarvis. She just is so worried about all she has to do with this human resources plan that she has to come up. And sometimes I feel as though Lisa is super conceited. So we realize that the reason why Keith, Omar are all at Jarvis's house because they plan to watch the Pharaohs play ice hockey. And we notice that Greg is not there. So if you don't know, Greg and Jarvis have this kind of twisted friendship or brotherhood. So we learned last episode that Omar and Keith called Greg out for being super brutal to Jarvis. And then we learned this episode that Jarvis went to Connecticut and then he came back here and then their whole friendship or brotherhood changed. So I don't know why Jarvis went to Connecticut, maybe to go to college or whatever else. But it's weird that their friendship changed. And I wonder what was the beginning of that friendship changing. Was it him just going to Connecticut, or was there something more that went on for that friendship to change? But going on to Greg. Greg is not there because he is Uber driving. And he gets an Uber request. And the request happens to be a woman from his past. So as he's going to meet her, she comes up to his window, talking to him, and he's like, yeah, you must then look at, who your Uber driver was going to be or anything like that. Which she peers in the window and she notices that it's Greg. We learned that this woman named Ari happens to be Greg's ex-fiance. Apparently, Ari left Greg for a man that she worked with and it didn't work out. And she starts teasing Greg about, you probably have 2 kids now and married. And then was like, oh, maybe you just not even stunning me. Maybe none of this even matters, you just went about your life. Which Greg takes kind of offense and he lets her know, no, it has been 19 months since you left me. And she's taken aback about it. In the middle of the ride, she asks Greg to take her to this wing spot that he once took her to, and she apparently had an argument with the employees of this wing shop, which he does. He takes her to the wing shop. She comes up the wing shop with a box of wings for her and a box of wings for him that happened to have the extra barbecue sauce, which was implied earlier that was the reason why she got into it with the employees of the wing shop, and in quote unquote she was banned, but she has the wings. Um, there's a lot of flirting going on with Ari towards Greg, and not so much Greg towards Ari. I feel like Greg is a little uncomfortable in the situation, and you can see the uncomfortable part of the situation, especially when he calls Omar while he's at the wing shop to let Omar know, like, hey, Ari's here. And Greg also was a bit hurt because while these guys are all at Jarvis's house, he feels like he was left out intentionally. So going back to Keith and Omar and Jarvis, when Omar hangs up the phone and Jarvis is like, did you tell him I was here? That you guys were here? And Omar's like, no, you did, doing all that yelling and stuff like that. And he lets Jarvis know that Greg actually likes Aksaki. And Omar and Keith don't really care for it. For them it's like watching paint dry. But Greg really enjoys it. And he feels kind of left out because he's not there. And then you see Jarvis kind of get a sad face and a fight breaks out in the game. And that's pretty much the last time we see Omar, Keith, and Jarvis for the rest of the episode. Going back to Greg. He finally gets to Ari's house, and Ari is still flirting. She can't open the door. She doesn't know how much her Uber is going to cost her. None of the above, okay? Even though, she seems like she's very particular because she quoted earlier when she first got in the car and requested to go to the wing shop that, oh yeah, it was a small meal and it was very expensive, but now she's pretty much as simple as can be. And it may be because she doesn't know that Greg already has a girlfriend and she's probably still thinking out that he's single, but in it all, Greg helps her open the door because, like I said, she's acting pretty simple, so she can't get the door open. She takes her wings and says bye, but apparently in her taking the wings, her phone is still in the car. So I don't know if this was intentional or not. I know that women tend to do that kind of stuff so they can keep in touch. But Greg doesn't notice that phone. He gets home to Serena and parks the car and throws the food that Ari brought him in the trash. And as he's walking to the house, to the front door of the house of Serena, the phone that Ari has left in the car starts to ring. And that's basically the episode. All of that is pretty simple. Now, I want to throw in some things, okay? That whole mental health thing is very important, and recently we've seen people like Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka and even Sha'Carri Richardson pretty much discussed that, they've had to do things to feel better mentally. And sometimes they haven't been in those spaces where they felt, confident, where they felt good about themselves. And I did a podcast for Analytical Perspective that is political, and I want to also imply it in this YouTube video that if you are struggling with mental health or your mental well-being, please seek help. Okay? And I'm not saying go to the church, but sometimes you need a doctor to or a certified counselor or therapist to honestly help you. And that's no shade to the church or anything. But I want people to be more confident in being able to say, hey, I need a little bit more help. Me, myself, I've had times where I haven't felt fully confident mentally. Sometimes I feel like I'm in a dark space. And it took me actually going to get help to help me figure out what was my next step. So I get those darkness waves way less now. It's effective to be able to have a conversation with someone so you don't feel alone in this. But at the same time, I will suggest you seek help any way facet, especially if you are suicidal, especially if you may think that you may be schizophrenic or bipolar. Please seek help. I want you around. The world wants you around. I know it probably doesn't mean much coming from me. It probably doesn't mean much that the world wants you around. But I want you to be confident that you can fight your way out. That's my spill on mental health. And I also want to discuss about Greg. Because I've been in those situations. I currently am not friends with any of my exes. And if you make it to the end of my videos, there is a person that I put at the end of my videos who also always asks like the tough questions. And I remember for one of her videos, she asked a question about, can guys and girls be friends after relationships and stuff like that. And I remember making a comment under her videos that I do not communicate with any of my exes. And it's out of personal choice. I feel like once you stop investing into someone, there's no reason for me to keep the rope for us to be attached. Another reason why I don't do it is because old feelings creep up very fast, and it doesn't take much. And I've been in certain situations where you come across an ex and you're having a conversation, or you have a dance, or whatever it may be. And one thing slowly leads to another, and you both end up in bed and trying to resolve things that should be left in the past. I've been in those situations and they're uncomfortable. I've also been in a situation where you're with a new woman and she's your girl, and your ex-fiance comes out of nowhere saying that she wants to be with you, and in being truthful and loyal, you tell the woman that you're with, hey, this is what happened, but I want to be with you. That situation did not end up great for me. I ended up being back with my ex-fiance because the woman I was with felt like she didn't want to be with me anymore. So I've been in both of those situations, and I feel like for Greg, this is already a confusing situation because Serena has said that she feels as though he has one foot in and one foot out. And knowing how Serena is, she loves food. He could have took those wings in and said, "Hey, babe, I got you some wings." But the fact that he just threw them in the trash, it makes me think like he knows that something bigger can come out of this. Like he could potentially lose the woman he's currently with, because it didn't seem like Ari's feelings were completely gone for Greg. And it seems like she's trying to rehash things from the past and trying to project them into being a future with him. My suggestion to this situation is, if you are ever in it, and I'm speaking to the guys, I can't say what women should do, but play out the pros and the cons. If you left this woman, or this woman left you for another guy, look, she left you for another guy, she'll probably leave you again. She's just trying to better her situation. But let's just say, like, you guys were moving different in a career-wise. Like, maybe you had to move to New York, or she had to move to California because that's where your career took you. I would say go ahead. You know, you never know what it could have been, because you both were looking out for your careers, and maybe that wasn't the time for you both to be together. But you have to weigh out the pros and cons. Sometimes people are not meant to be in your life forever. You know, sometimes people aren't meant to just be there for a quick season or a quick day. And then there are people who are meant to be there, and they come about into your life later on. I will say this. I went to school with a woman who ended up being my fiance about 10 years later. We're no longer together, but I still wholeheartedly love her to death. Like, still wholeheartedly, even though I don't communicate with her, because I feel as though she's in a better place, and she has someone to present her the things that she wants to have in life, like kids and marriage. And for me, those things weren't essential for me. I just want to have the commitment and travel the world and do fun things. And kids is not really my thing right now. And marriage, we could do that. But like I said, I want to be able to travel and have fun with my significant other. So at that same moment, that also is a possibility, that someone out of your past can come up, and then 10 years later you're engaged and it works out, and you're together for the next 30 to 50 years or 60 years. Who knows? But like I said, if you're ever in a situation, please weigh out the pros and cons, because the worst thing you can do in a situation like Greg's is to let it escalate to a point where both women end up hurt, where both women end up dragging your name through the ground. So think it out. And I hope that on the next episode that Greg tries to at least attempts to tell Serena, like, oh, guess what was funny? My last passenger last night was my ex Ari. Just so she knows. Because I feel as though if he keeps it secret and doesn't tell her, she'll feel like something more went on. Why were you keeping it secret if it's no big deal? You know what I'm saying? But that's pretty much my thoughts for Greg. Lastly, I would like to say this. I feel as this episode was a really good 8 again, because it touched on so many pivotal things, whether it was mental health with Omar, whether it was going for your dreams with Keith, or if it was just Jarvis having the impression that people are using you for their benefit, and you are basically dismissing your own dignity just to please them or their benefit. And when it comes to Greg, the hardships of breakups and relationships, because it's not easy to balance when you break up with someone and trying to still be cordial while being in a relationship, or being in a relationship and trying to make a foundation when you're not sure really what the next move is. So I definitely would give this episode an A. I can't wait to see what the next episode will be about. Hopefully we're seeing more of a connection between Omar and Naomi, because this guy needs to see his son. And he's trying to be a good father, and I want to see black men doing better on TV shows, being supportive and caring black fathers. We need that. I also would like to see Greg and Serena really have those communication moments where they can express to each other what they really need. Not what they want, but what they need from each other. With Jarvis, I feel like he also needs that communication moment with Lisa, because I feel like she just sits back and totally disregards the situation, because let's be real. White people don't really see racism in the way that we see racism, or a way a black person sees racism, I should say. They kind of ignore it. Unless it's someone saying directly the N-word, they don't pay it any mind. You know, I was dating a woman, and we were having a conversation after George Floyd, and I was saying, well, if this incident would have happened, how would you have felt? And she was like, you know, you're looking for racism. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm aware that racism happens. I'm not saying that instantly every time I see a white person, I feel like they're going to be racist against me. But at the same time, I have to be aware that sometimes when you go to certain areas, white people will treat you different than how you want to be treated. So with that said, I am officially done. I am officially done with this episode, and it was a joy. It was a joy spending time with you, and it was a joy watching this episode, and I hope that you watched the episode if you didn't watch it, or watch the next episode, because I will be coming back with another review. But this has been Analytical Perspective, the Entertainment Edition, and I am Farrah Moses, and I will see you later.